Well, you're
So
looking
this,
good, buddy. You don't look like you've aged a minute.
oh, the my hair is starting to turn white. I gotta reshave it. I gotta get it. I gotta get it as bald as yours. I gotta get the razor to it. I got a
Yeah.
barber that I go to, so she might take the razor to it next time.
Well, that's all us old farts can do is just keep it slick. So it's good to see you, buddy. It's
Yeah,
good to
you
see
too.
you.
You too.
Um,
I've been enjoying all your videos.
well, man, thank you. That means a lot. I really love it, and and I hope that translates well.
Right.
But this gentleman's name is Quartz Griner. I met him, I would say, almost 15 years ago when I was invited to there was an open invite to the Timberline Bigfoot Group's uh, annual meetup down at Holly Creek. And I caught wind of that online one night. I had heard David Holly's story. Uh, and so I was super excited to join up with those guys. Quartz, on the other hand, he was involved with that group because he was a photographer by trade, and he was going to be their documentarian. Or they were kind of working on documentaries and
Right.
just
Right.
video diaries of what's going on out there. And since Court was the expert in that, that's why he came into that group. But Court has had his own Bigfoot experiences also.
Yes.
So that's how I met Court. Take me back to that time frame when you were first brought in. How did you even become aware of David Holly and them's
Yeah.
Bigfoot studies?
I was thinking because looking back at the old pictures, it got me reminiscing, and it was funny. I was still living in Wichita Falls, and I was getting ready to graduate and get out of there, and I had been researching, I guess, armchair researching Bigfoot stuff and Bigfoot groups. I had just found out, like those groups out there that go do this, and and I had just run across, I think at the time it was Texoma Paranormal and Bigfoot Investigations or something. It was David and his son John and a few of the others, and they were a small group, and he had just a message board. And this is before MySpace. This is before Facebook. This is like 2000, early 2004. And so I guess kind of, joined his little chat board, his message board, and I would listen. I would read his stories about being around the campfire, and he would repeat a lot of the stuff that's happened. Even now, he talks about. And at the time, I was like, yeah, man, I really want to go to one of those things. Maybe I get stay in touch with this guy because he doesn't seem like a big famous guy or anything. He just seems like a local that knows a lot about the subject. And then fast forward, I moved back home, and I got my post college life started, and at the time had met my girlfriend and wife, and then I David gave me an invite. He said, "Hey, late September. I think it was before he started doing things in October. Late September, when the fall starts, we're going to have a little expedition here at Pat Mays Lake." And I said, "All right, I'm on it."
So how
And
close was Pat Mays to you at the time?
so at the time, from Whitesboro, Texas, to out there in Paris, it's about an hour and a half.
Not bad.
It's a little farther now than I live out down in Denton. But it was right on 82. It was like, okay, well, we just, so we I had taken my girlfriend at the time, uh Anna, and she was open-minded about the subject, and so she said, "You've always wanted to do this, so I'll go with you." And we made the drink. So we just speeded down Highway 82 from Whitesboro to Paris, Texas. We made our way out to Pat Mays Lake, and I remember it was at the one of the loops, and at the big campground, you had to rent out a loop. They would rent out loop B or loop A, one or the other. They had loop, I think it was the B loop down the bottom of the hill, and they were standing out there, and at the time, I wasn't, we're him and I are from two different worlds. I'm from the suburban area of MSU and Wichita Falls, Texas. Was the last several years, and he's about as country bumpkin as you can get, but just they greeted us with hospitality, had gave us some food, and they said, we can't promise you a sighting or anything, but we can promise you some good stories and some good food, and then that weekend is when I started we went out to the woods with them, and I started seeing some really cool stuff with big trees. I mean, not suspect stuff. It's stuff that like trees like this big around that were like bent over and put into, it was crazy. And that's what
Well,
really
it always helps when you have woodsmen with you and they know the signs, and they know animal signs, they know things that happen naturally. So to
right.
have experienced woodsmen like David and
Sure.
his son be able to explain things, how this couldn't have been natural, or this was
Right.
probably manipulated somehow by
Right.
intelligence. That's
Right.
always nice to have
Yeah.
guidance from people like that.
Right. Right. And it was funny because I was like, this is a one-time thing. This is like, I think I'm just going to do this as a fun photo project. It just after that, it was next adventure, next adventure, next adventure. It was once or twice a year with him. Um, one of the things that really got me on that trip, um, it wasn't the evidence on the ground or trees bent over. It was when they took me across the lake to this area. I can't know. I don't know if you've been to the Lamar Point area, and we went up the tank trail, or actually we went around to the area of there's an old boat pull-in area that's from down farther down about a mile, and then that's where we went into. And I remember we boated over there. We had just me and John and Brandon. It was just three of us, and I was kind of scared because this is a very remote place. And I remember hearing a very low rumble growl that just I felt it in my chest, and that's one of the things that really got me in that trip
Now,
because
when I was there with you and Blake, and
right.
we went, there was a long dirt road that we went down. Me, and him. Is that
Mhm.
location that you're talking about?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think back to all other thing that we did with you. There was, yeah, it could have been it. That could have been it. It was a long dirt. Part of it's paved, and it led down to a boat ramp that is now closed. I think, so it's kind of a vacant area. It's a great area to research because it is thick and it is
Oh yeah,
creepy.
I just remember the wall of trees on both
The
sides of the
wall of
road,
trees,
just
yeah, the
going
wall of
going
trees.
down
That's,
forever.
that's what makes it creepy. And the wall of trees is even thicker at night. It's
Yeah.
bad in the daytime, but it's really bad at night. Yeah, it's a woogie boogie area.
Yeah, no. So, I really have enjoyed my time, with David and his son, and for the viewers, you're going to need to go back into my videos, because I've got a video about Rebel Island, about being chased off Rebel Island by a monster. That is David Holly's story. So you may have to go back and look at that as a refresher, because we will probably be referencing that several times in this conversation. So
And
you
I,
don't want to
and
be.
I Right, and I found out like actually go now that we have Google Earth, and I think they didn't have that back in the day. That it's actually not an island. I think it's actually what it is. It's a mountain that kind of jets out. It's a mountaintop that jets out with a steep ridge line, and it kind of it's got that
Comes in from
rounded.
the east side of the lake
And
there.
so whatever side that you pull around to it on a boat, you have to climb it. So basically, what it is, it's a steep mountain peninsula, is what it is, and it's steep on all sides too. Yeah,
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense that anything from the east side, which we know is a very active side of the lake, uh, they
I,
have the
I believe,
water. The water gives them a nice, safe buffer where they can come
mhm,
out on the top of that peninsula and look down into those campsites.
right,
So clearly, that's what
yeah,
happened when he was a young man and went over there.
correct, yeah. I mean, in that time, he said he never heard of. I think maybe he's heard of something like some ape man of of Mississippi or something like that. I think he had heard of what is it, East Texas and Louisiana, that little area, Arkansas, the Falcon Monster. I think maybe he's just briefly heard about that, but he didn't believe any of it at the time.
On the video where I talk about that, I mentioned
Right,
all the names. It was his uncle and his cousin, and then his best
right,
friend.
right. And yeah, they had a few family members, and it was him and his best friend. His best friend had never been out of Clarksville ever camping, and they went out there, and yeah, they had that experience, man. And it's really weird because all these years from 2005 when I met him, even on up to 2010, I was about to bring David down here so my filmmaking friends could film him because I had people that are filmmakers. But at that time, DSLRs were starting to go video, and I said, I'm not interested in doing video. And then all of a sudden, I got a Canon 5D Mark II, and I got to see what video looks like. And I said, "Oh my gosh, the cinematic look to this." I said, "Okay, this is coming with me the next time I see David." And I
So,
pleaded with
so when did David bestow on you the the title of being the group
photographer.
documentarian?
I think it was before that. I think it was more of back in maybe the second time out with him. Maybe it was like around '06 or '07, even '08, because he just saw the kind of picture, the storytelling pictures I took. And they're more of a more him and John are more of a run and gun type. I can't I'll use it as a loose term, but they like to, they like to do the research part of it and not worry about so much taking pictures and stuff. They might have Perry taking this camera for reference, but he says when it comes to storytelling and just getting pictures of us doing what we do out in the field, he said, man, Quartz just nails it. And so that was kind of my role early on. I was like the only non-armed guy out there. I was like the embedded reporter out there, doing Gonzo investigation, and it was fun, man. I live for it. You know me. I mean, I just I'm just kind of like I don't like scripted stuff. I just like to just shoot the action as it happens, and however scary it gets, who cares?
So to
So,
let everybody know, that is how Quartz and I came into contact with each other around that time frame.
but,
He had been involved with for several years Timberline Bigfoot group, and he's still, of course, David is getting older, but
but,
he's Quartz may be in the process of kind of taking over that role of continuing the areas that they have researched over the years.
right.
So, maybe we could all help support that and and I'd like to spend some time out with him too, if I
Yeah.
ever get the opportunity.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
the whole reason that you got involved way back in the day when you were doing your own online research was
Right.
you had your own experiences when you were a young man.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't long after there. Actually, there's an experience I've never told you about that happened when I was 14 up in Illinois, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But after that first expedition with David, I said, okay, I've seen some really cool stuff, and I was already starting to research uh, Lake Ray Roberts, which is close to where I live at, because I had read about reports there. And what was going by the time that I had started researching with David, I had been researching by myself, and he was giving me some advice like, "Hey, you really shouldn't do this by yourself. Even though they seem a little bit more docile, because at Lake Ray Roberts, I had found these like, what you've seen before, like these branches put over, and like I would be gone for 3 days, and I would come back to that same spot, and there'd be more branches put on top of it. Like they knew I was there, so they tried to hide it. And then what I haven't had a visual encounter out there of them, but I've been followed out there. I've found the prints. I photographed some prints. The vocal that scared me out of the woods. When I used to go down this um, cove and then up this hill. Well, I said, well, why don't I just park my car here and walk across the field, and then I'll be in where I wanted to go. I'll be at my destination. And so I did that one time, one evening when nobody was out there, And I walked in, I set my bag down because I found some bent over cool trees, and I was just about to do video, and I heard a vocal that sounded like this. Real deep. I call it the ho-ho video, or the ho-ho vocal. The
Wow.
only person, and it was deeper than that, and it hit me. It was about 60 yards away in the woods from me, but whatever made it was watching me. And I had just sat my satchel down. I was going to get my camera out and my camcorder, and I was going to film this tree. And I heard that, and I ran to the wood line, and I stopped there, and I hung out there for 30 minutes. And I could hear them moving around. You could hear big movement. The only person that I know who's said they've heard that sample or that vocal is the guy that does the Survivor Man. That's the vocal.
Les Stroud.
Les Stroud. If I ever meet him, I will tell him that I have heard that vocal that he heard in Alaska. It sounded like a deep ho 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 ho.
Yeah,
Ho.
he did a real good job of talking about that encounter.
And
So,
yeah, and it was very abrupt and very loud, and it sounded like they were trying to set off a warning. Either they're trying to warn me or warn the others. And so yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was one that I've never heard it before ever.
yeah,
But
clearly they have a wide range of vocal uh,
yeah,
tactics that
sure.
we've only scratched the surface on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've heard the mumble out there, the knocks. So I went out there by myself, and I'd take the coastline. There'd be like knocks on the hillside. And I know those are not areas where people go to. It's thick in there. That's not everyone that goes to this at the time when this trailhead was open, the beach was open, before they closed that area off. I used to go out there by myself, and I used to hear knocks on it's just them kind of warning each other about them observing me.
Let's get into your first encounter in Illinois
Well,
when you were
mhm.
14, since that would
Okay.
be what you consider your first event.
Yeah.
Let's go over that first, and then take me to your
Actual.
homestead in
Yeah.
Texas.
Right. Okay. So I didn't really, and I still don't know if this is Bigfoot related, but I'm guessing if I knew then what I know now, I would say we encountered a Bigfoot. So at the time it was 1988, and it was northern Illinois, so it was lots of cornfields, but in between cornfields there was thick woods. It's similar to Kansas, where you're at. I guess it's like cornfields and thick woods, and they have some ravines and stuff, and it's very agricultural based. But my friends lived in this little strip of houses out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know if it was just a community. It wasn't a town. It was just a community, and they had these lots that went back. And some people had orchards. We used to camp in the back of his lot, but we got permission to go past his lot through the cornfield, which the corn is only this big at the time. I think it was the summertime. The summertime in Illinois is nothing like here in Texas. You actually have to wear a jacket or a sweatshirt at night in Illinois. Um, but we got permission by the guy who owns a patch of square woods about 300 yards in the middle of the cornfield, and there's the cornfield kind of wraps through it, kind of wraps around it, so it looks like they made the cornfield go through the woods, so now it's separated from the main woods, the bigger woods. So he says you guys can camp there. It's nice, and it's covered, and you can't have a campfire. And I wanted that campfire so bad, but I was like, all right, well, his dad said no campfire. So I was like, all right, because it was a liability for his neighbor down the street that owned that patch of woods. And I said, okay. So we went out there, and I had these pots and these little camp pots and pans that all go in together. I had that, and I clicked onto my backpack, and we went out there. We set up a putt tent, and I think his older brother his family was kind of religious, and it was my friend Jason. It was Jason, Jeremiah, something else with a J, but they all had J names. But Jason, and then I think Jerry. Jerry was his big brother who went. He was going to sleep on a cot outside because he was like our chaperone, or whatever. So he went out there with us, and I think I put all the flashlight. We dug a pit and we took the flashlights and we just put them up uh, toward the trees. So we couldn't have a campfire, but we could make like a pretend campfire, right? That was pretty cool for 14 years old, right? And I got my little pots and pans out. I think we made. Oh yeah, I think I. What did I do? We ate ravioli that night out of the can. That was that was fun. And so that was our dinner. So no campfire and cold ravioli. And so his brother Jerry goes, let's just sit here and listen to the sounds of the night. And about that time, I guess it was about 50 meters, 60 meters through the woods, to the edge of the woods before you get to the cornfield, you could hear, I mean, snap, but slow, something big moving through. I don't think it was coming toward us, but it looked like it was paralleling us. And I was like, what is that? Because those cows, but this guy has a cornfield. He doesn't have cows. So Jerry being I guess he was a freshman or junior in high school. He's like, hey, who's there? And it stopped. And then it picked up again. You can hear it going through the leaves and snapping a few little sticks. And we shined the lights, and we didn't have those powerful mag lights that they have nowadays, but we shined our flashlights on there. But when we shined our flashlights, we couldn't see anything, but it stopped. And then you could kind of see her kind of moving around a little bit. What it sounded like, it sounded big. It did not sound like a deer. It did not sound like a dog or anything like that. It just sounded big. Like someone's cow got loose, but not, cows would have gotten spooked by then and just took off or looked our direction. You could see it. This wasn't doing that. This was staying out of our flashlights. So Jerry says, okay, you guys get what you need, and we're going to go that way. And when I count to 3, because we're gonna go through the woods and out into the cornfield, and then we're going to hang a right. And I'm going to be the lead guy of the flashlight, so you just follow me. He counts to 3, and we all take up. And I'm like, I don't know why I was grabbing all my stuff, but I didn't. I had those clunkety pans and pots and pans, kind of stuff. Clink, 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 clink. The woods it didn't look like it was hard to get through it in the daytime, but at nighttime, it was every little vine and twigs and stuff. But we were so scared that we just took off through there, and we came out of the woods, and we were into the cornfield. I mean, thankfully the cornfield wasn't grown up, because that would have been even more sucked. But it was only like this high, it was like ankle high. And we made we ran the Mogadishu Mile. It felt like it through that cornfield. I think it was, I don't know, like 300 yards to the little small paved road, and caught our breath. Nothing was following us, but I was the last one to make it to the road. But that scared the bejesus out of me, because it was like whatever it was, like it was just slow and methodical.
So did you make it back home that night? Did you guys abandon camp?
We abandoned camp. We walked the road. I think we were about maybe a half mile from the house. We walked the road. We turned down Jason's road, and we got inside. His dad was sitting there on the recliner chair going, y'all back already. And we kind of told him what happened. But we're not going back out there, because whatever it was big, and I don't know. We went back there the next day and got the pup tent and got the rest of our gear. But we left very quickly, because that was, I think it was more of Jerry's reaction, because he was the oldest. He's the junior in high school, and we're like the 14-year-olds, and he's scared. So it's like, if he's scared, if he doesn't feel good in the situation. 'Cause I thought maybe, did you send one of your friends out here just to spook us? Yeah, that's what I thought at first. But he's like, guys, we're getting ready to get out of here. Okay. I just, you're in the
Uh,
lead, man. I'm just following.
Man,
So,
you never know. I mean, that's close to Iowa. You know all the stories from Illinois, all the way
it,
down to the
it,
Oklahoma,
it
all the way down to the
where
Missouri
I lived
border.
at, was close to Wisconsin.
Yeah, all of those where all of those states converge is lots and lots of
Lots of
reports.
stories. I went back after getting into this. I went back and I looked at the BFRO database, and I looked at Northern Illinois, and I said, "Holy crap, there's a lot up there."
Yeah.
So
So it very well could be. So
yeah,
then
it could be.
you're down in Texas and
So I went to Texas, and I'm going to tell you what led up to this. Uh, Me getting into researching, having my encounter. So, but if you go south a little bit, go south, go south. We'll keep going. Where's Callisburg on there?
Harrisburg.
Should be right around the area. Or
It,
say Gainesville, and then you go a little bit east of Gainesville. And that's okay. There's Gainesville. So about right,
Harrisburg.
yeah, Callisburg. If you go a little bit north of there, that's about roughly the area where he has land in. And I hated going out there because you got to go over this little bridge that's supposed to be haunted. And he lived in the small little trailer. Him and his family lived in a small little trailer, and they built onto it. But they lived out there while his dad was a trucker. And I hated going out there because it was spooky and there was all sorts of night sounds and whatever. So I got a call one day in around 1993, as after I graduated high school with him, and he said he was working in Sherman. He had to go home real quick because his brother Booger and cousin Neil, they had to make these clear cut areas through their property through the woods, and they had a clear cut area where they had a bonfire area, and that was the area where they would sit down some chairs and enjoy the night and have some beers. And they were there one night, and obviously live out way out in the boonies, so they're armed. They had a shotgun. They're just sitting there sharing some stories, having some beers, and all of a sudden they heard some footsteps behind them, and they both turned around, and they said whatever it was 7.5 feet tall, broad shoulders, covered in hair, and he grabbed the shotgun. I don't know who grabbed the shotgun, who did it, but he grabbed the shotgun real quick and he put a round in its chest. He fired it. He said he hit it square in the chest, and it screamed and ran back into the woods. And when Yancey got out to by the time he got from Sherman out to his land, he said that there were a number of cars, game wardens, and county sheriffs out there, and they I don't know really what they asked about, because they had called these people after the incident because they don't know what they're dealing with. They they didn't know it was a bear or what, but they said it was 7.5 feet tall. So the investigators had found some blood on the trees, and they collected that, but they never got back with them about what it was, identification. That is what started my curiosity about Bigfoot in Texas.
Well,
And
just to let everybody know, the Red River here, that's down by Brown Springs, which is just right there out of Thackerville.
right there where you're right there where you got if you go right there, that's a bad neighborhood. In neighborhood as in there's no neighbors out there. That's
So really, anybody who's done any research at all has heard about Brown Springs and the Red River area. So that's a very close proximity, with a lot of woods in between the two, to these rural areas. So that's where his friend had his encounter. And then not too far down here is where Courts lived.
so I'll try to give you the best recount of it, and I won't try to ramble about it, but I'll try to give the best detail as I can. So if you go, if you zoom in just a little bit, where that little ticker mark is in the middle of our property. That's our property next to Highway 377, and right there. And so we own that little square right there. that little square in front of my property is the Lynch's, and then that we own this property with the woods. So I had come home late one night, pulled up, and my headlights hit some red eyes in our near our barn, just past the horse gate. And I joked to myself, I said, what if that's a Bigfoot looking at me? You know, but it was about 7 feet up. So I didn't pay no attention to it. The next morning, I went out into my woods, which is the back of the top of the screen there. Our woods is the top of the screen right there. And I went back there because I hadn't been back there in a few years. And so I decided to do some morning photography back there. And we don't have any paths back there. Just kind of and it was in early November, like close to my birthday. It was after Halloween. And it was still, things were starting to kind of really cool off then. Leaves were kind of starting to come down. It wasn't too thick. And I was back there and I was taking some pictures and I started hearing from the property adjacent to ours, which is to the left there in the woods where you are, yeah, where your cursor is. And I started hearing some wood knocks, like pow, 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 pow. And I said, that sounds like Bigfoot's, but I didn't pay no attention because I'm not at Lake Ray Roberts. I'm not out researching. Maybe I'm just taking this a little too seriously. So I just walked back through my woods to closer to where I heard the knocks at. And I was in this area on the western side of my woods, which it's actually more of a clearing. You can't tell there, but it's more of a clearing, yeah. And I stood there and I listened. And I heard the back corner of my wooded area. Something was coming up over the fence line. You could hear the creaks and the fence being bent. And whatever it was, the back corner of our property, the very back of the square, is like some pine tree. It's all pine trees, and you could see something heavy, or you could hear something heavy shifting its weight on back behind the cedar trees. And I couldn't see it, but whatever it was there. And I started stepping backwards, and I said, okay. So I kind of grabbed my tripod, and I was like, don't want to be back here, whatever that is. I'm not sure. I'm not going to stick around and try to be Mr. Hero and try to take pictures. So I decided to go ahead and go on back to the house. So I made my way out of there, walked across the pasture, and just hung out for the rest of the day and whatever. That night is where it got weird because I was living at home with the parents at the time. That was their property, and so every time I was at my computer, and every time I turned down the music and I could hear in the front lawn, it was fenced in with a long driveway, but you could hear like a swoosh, swoosh, like someone going through the leaves, like someone walking in your yard. And then I would hear I feel vibrations on the cement porch. And I was like, okay, so I turned down my music, and I was like, there's something out there. So I didn't want to investigate, but I was like, well, let me just flip on the floodlights. Our porch light was off, it was out, but I knew that our floodlights on each four corners were still on. So I hit the floodlights, and I heard it stop, and I kind of heard it, kind of move around somewhere else. I was like, okay. So this went on kind of back and forth. I would hear it again. I would do the same. So one time I actually took the floodlights, I flipped them off, and I stood by the front door, and I just listened. I kind of put my ear to the wall, and I just listened. And I heard that swoosh, swoosh again. So I flipped them on again, and went click, 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 with doing them up, on, off, on, off, on, off, like an alarm. And that's when I heard outside. I heard, it's this weird little mumble out in the front lawn. And I said, well, that was weird. So, and my mom was up late doing her transcription work in the other room, in her office room. And I was trying to fill her in the best I can with some of the stuff I've experienced over the years. And I didn't know how much she believed me, but I said, there's something moving around outside the house. I don't know what it is, but it sounds big. So I decided I was in my room for a little bit, and I put my ear to the wall underneath my computer desk, and there's a little gap from my windowsill to my blinds that was dark. You could see out, you could kind of see outside and flip the floodlights on. Well, the floodlights weren't on. It was pitch black out there, but I saw two red eyes looking at me, like just, and they're moving side to side, like like when like a chimp is agitated. Yeah, the side, side to side, looking at me like this. It was kind of observing me, and I got up off that wall and I stood back up. I said, okay. So I went and I had my mom come out on the porch with me, and we went back. We looked around. We didn't hear anything, didn't see anything. So we go back inside, and I start getting my shoes on. So I said, I think I'm going to go down to Anna's house in Carrollton, which is down near Dallas, because I said I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight until I figure out what's going on. So I was getting my shoes on, and I was sitting on the floor, and I was looking out that windowsill space between the blinds and the windowsill, and I could see I saw two big silhouettes in the night, because the neighbors in front of us, about 500 meters in front of us, had their little light on the pole on their farm, and I saw the two big silhouettes go past that light, because the light was making the silhouette, but it was the classic big shoulders, little head, and you couldn't see in detail because it was dark. But the one went by, and then another one went. So they're in the front yard. We don't have any neighbors, or their nearest neighbor is like 500 meters away. So the second one's shoulder hit a branch that was like 7 feet up. You could see the branch moving back and forth after he hit it, and that was enough for me. I said, I'm going to get my shoes. I said, Mom, grab the flashlight. I'm opening up this door to get to the car, and you are going to, whatever I see, you are going to see with me. So we went out there. We stood there for a second, and I said, here's my choices. I'm either going to go around the back, which I didn't want to do, from the front of the house around, because our car was around back, or I'm going to just open up the garage door, get my car started up, and then close it up, and I'll be on my way. And so we're sitting there, and you could hear something beating on the tree 200 meters away down at the edge of our property. You could hear clack, 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 like they were trying to warn the others that we were out on the porch. And about that time, there's a big oak tree at the end of our porch that's been there forever. It's an old oak tree, a big one. And you heard something going up it, and then you heard the branch that went over our house go kapook, kapook on the cutter. So whatever it was, went up the tree and used the big branch to go onto the roof. And you heard a thud, 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 thud of footsteps on our roof. And I'm thinking,
that's this structure right here.
that's our barn. So our house will be right in front of it. Let's see, our house would be, our house should have about right there. Yeah. Yeah, that's about where our house is.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm thinking it's a younger juvenile, and you've encountered the juveniles before, but this one went on the roof, and he went and hit himself on the roof. And once I heard those footsteps, I said, all right, Mom, get back in the house. I'm going to head out. And I said, if you guys lock the doors, if you guys hear anything, call, my dad's real good with the sheriff there, or the town sheriff in Collinsville. And I said, just call somebody out here. But I'm getting in my car and I'm heading down to Carrollton. And I'll investigate tomorrow when I come back. So I left. At the time, Anna, when she saw me, she said, she could tell I was physically shaken. I came back the next day, and I got some binoculars, and I had my first little digital camera that was not worth a crap. And I made my way through the horse gate, and I made my way west, where that pin drop is. The red pin drop is about where I was. When I started moving north from there, and I got to an area where you could see clearly through the tree line to the next door neighbors, the Nixons. That's their property, and their property wraps around ours. So I got to a spot where I could just clearly see through there until I could see their pond and everything. And there are some donkeys and a couple of no, there's a couple about two or three donkeys sitting there. And I was talking to them, and they get up in single file, they leave. And that's odd. And I was like, they've always just sat there by the fence line and just looked at me. But why are they leaving? And I noticed if you keep going west on that picture, that's going downhill into the Nixon's property. If you want to pull it left, yeah, go ahead and pull it that way. Yeah, keep on going. Right there,
Is that the pond?
that's the pond. So I would say a little bit north of that pond, a little bit north, right about there. It's kind of shrubby, but it's an area where the vegetation's not so bad. I noticed down there that it looked like a big auburn colored animal. And I thought maybe it's a cow or something. So I pulled out my binoculars, and the moment that I looked through those binoculars across my fence line down through their pasture, I caught what looked like the biggest orangutan you've ever seen. And it was looking at me, kind of peeking its way up from one of those little shrubby Texas cedars. It would just peek out, and they would lean back behind the cedars, and then it would lean back out again. It would look to its right, and then it locked. It couldn't. That's about 200. Well, that's about 300 meters between where I was and it. So it really couldn't tell what I was doing. It couldn't really observe any detail. I mean, I think it just saw me. And so as I looked at it through the binoculars, it rose up. And I tell you what, man, it just kept going and going and going. Like it kept getting taller and taller. And with that really fluid locomotion, made its way to the right. And I think it sat right down. And then another one came out behind it, and they were both kind of sitting, no, I don't want to say back to back, but they were sitting, one was sitting down, or one was sitting, and one was like perched kind of above it. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm just trying to remember what I was seeing. And they were just looking, very glaring in my direction, and then they would look. The one that was lower would look up at the one behind it, and that one would look down at them, and I think they would touch noses or something like that, but I could see their mouths moving.
So let me go back to the previous day when you said that you entered this wood line here,
Right.
that you hadn't been in there for a long, long time.
I think 1994 is the last time I was back there.
So for the first time, you go into here because you hear some strange things, and you're hearing something moving, and this would be a little connection to this property over
Yeah,
here that
yeah.
you
No,
would have cover. And so, needless to say, you may have pushed something out of here reluctantly over to here, and they were still keeping their eye on you, even though it was a day or so later.
yeah, that's the same one. I think these are obviously the ones that came out of my house, up to my house that night.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of weird, bizarre that they were still hanging out in the area. Um, it's just amazing and the sad thing about this, I mean, I know people like if you had a camera, you take a picture, and I think I was just in shock. One, I did not have a good camera. It was like 5 megapixels, and anything at 300 meters at 5 megapixels is not going to show up.
Well,
And I said, oh,
for all the time that I've known you, you've always had a full beard. Did you have a full beard at that time?
no, I had a baby face.
Okay.
I had a baby face, and then a small little beard thing right underneath my lip. That was my main thing up until I didn't start getting the beard until like maybe 2012.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I was just wondering if maybe your
yeah,
facial hair was something they had an interest in.
I think it was my size because I'm 5'2". I think that they actually think I was a juvenile, a kid.
That is a very good observation on your part, because
I
they are less afraid of juvenile humans.
that and I'll backtrack just for a second here. A lot of the incidents that I had up at Lake Ray Roberts seemed to involve another juvenile trying to play around tricks. I would show up to the remote coves where I had just done landscape set and I heard some movement on the hillside, I would come back the very next day to do some more pictures, and then there's something that's left there for me.
Man, thank you
You
so
know,
much for saying that. That is an interesting thing
it,
to that maybe we have to consider that.
it's something I've really considered a lot of times with especially at Lake Ray Roberts. I think the group out there is not they're not malevolent like some of the other ones I've come across out like at Pat Mays Lake in the Kiamichi Mountains. So these ones they seem to be the little family unit out there. I think that they actually like to follow me and they like to observe me. And I would play the game with them. I would knock back at them. I would do little hoots and stuff like that. And I think that just kind of popped their interest. And I think that the ones out of Lake Ray Roberts, I think they observed me enough out there, whatever I was doing, to know that this guy is just here to just kind of play with us, and then we're just going to leave him alone. Because I've never had anything aggressive out there, but I always keep my head on swivel, you know.
Yeah.
But so once I was observing these guys through the binoculars, because in what I saw was roughly 8, maybe even 9 feet tall, reddish hair, very muscular. When it walked, you could see you know how when you look at horses walking, you can see the muscle structure. That was what I was seeing in the binoculars, and they were communicating with each other. They were watching me, and I said, "Well, I'm gonna go not bother these guys." That I don't know what I was thinking. I think I was in shock. I'll be man enough to admit that I was probably in shock. But a small part of me said it was either right after my birthday or right before. But I said, "What a cool birthday present to get to actually see these guys, right?" And so I went back across my pasture, back toward my barn. And so if you want to pull back down again, pull up. Yeah, go ahead and pull that back down where my pasture is. And right about in the middle of the pasture is where I caught. I looked toward my woods and I saw a big charcoal gray mass moving through my woods on all fours. And about midway, halfway point through my woods, there's a big open area that you can't tell there, but if you looked at my woods, you could see it. But he caught me and I caught him because we were moving in opposite directions toward each other. And it was he looked like a big oversized chimp. And I laid down on the ground and I looked through binoculars and he was a little bit closer. And I kicked myself this very day because even with the bad camera, I think I went back and I took pictures with the camera that was a little bit better than the one I had. And I probably could have gotten a decent picture. May have not been the best picture, but so he was looking at me and he was doing the same thing. He was leaning out from a thick cedar tree, and he would look to his left like he wanted to go, or he looked to his right like he wanted to go to that fence line and get with the others. And so looking at him through the binoculars, you could see like some gray striations in his beard, in some of his fur. I could even see his chest breathing in and out. Like he was just in his eyes because the sun was hitting his eyes, so they were lighting up like red beams behind the cedars, and so he was just kind of glaring at me like, "Come on back, come on back here." And I just laid there, and then I heard my dad say, calling my name because he needed my help with digging this pipe on the side of the house. And I said, "Okay, well, he's not going to believe me. So I'm going to leave him alone and I'm going to go back to the house and help Dad." And I told Mom that I said, "I think I just saw what came up the house last night." My mom is, she's kind of old school. She's like, well, whatever it is, just leave it alone." So, and that's the incident. Right.
I'm going to assume that that's the oak tree you're talking about.
That's the edge of the. If you go left to the house, all right, right there at the edge, right there is that oak tree,
Okay.
right there. It's real close. It's a dark, dark corner. If you're standing outside with the porch light on, it's a dark corner, and that oak tree is so big that you can't get your hands around it. It's huge.
Okay, so I guess using a tree to get up on the roof is one thing. It could probably just jump down from anywhere it wanted to jump down.
Yeah, it could have jumped down on the back of the house into the backyard and went across the fence line.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I really like the idea that for the reason of them being more curious about you than maybe anyone else that lived there or came there was because of your size. That's a great
The,
observation.
the really weird thing is that they came right directly to my window that night.
Yeah.
It's almost like they knew where I was. Now,
Wow.
I will tell you something that I found out by doing some more future researching out there in the months after. 'Cause I used to wait with my mom even got me these digital binoculars you could take pictures with, and I used to wait out that at that same spot during the same time of day on the weekends. I used to wait out there and say hope to hell that I would see the same thing, but I never did. But when I walked around the property line, I noticed by the fence line that if you go down the fence line past the house, so if you turn around and you look at the back of the house, there's a cedar area and it had like deadfall. It was picked up from somewhere else and put there, and the cedars were bent and put into one another. And so if you stood behind it, you had this wall of the camouflage, but you could see the back bedroom of the house where my mom did her transcription work every night.
Wow.
And then if you go back past the house, so down by the tree line where the pond was on the hillside of the pond, the branches that were on the fence line were cracked in half and put down like this, so you could get behind it like this. And they had the classic twist in them, so they were put down like this, so you could stand a few feet on the side of the hill of that pond and get behind those branches, and you could see anytime my dad got in the porch to smoke a cigarette in the middle of the night, you could watch that.
Wow.
They 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 had
That's some good
they had been
investigation
watching.
work there.
That's when I first started out too, and I was like, there. I said, I bet you there's some real good clues along this fence line by the tree line, but between the two properties, because what they do is they use the fence lines of the properties because everybody was so far away from each other that there's no lights, you can just follow the fence lines and go up. The other thing that they were doing was my older half brother who was staying there. He had a room in the barn. He had never heard anything, but his friend Eric had spoken to my dad about something. And he walked out to his truck, and on the map, the railroad goes right past our house. So it's thick with trees on both sides of the railroad and then the highway. And he said something out by the railroad was following him. It was paralleling him. He stopped for a second, and then he started. He got spooked because he came back in there, and the next day he had told my half brother Billy. He said there was something following me on the other side of the fence line by the railroad tracks. He said I'd stop and it'd stop, and I said, that was
Typical
probably one. So they
typical
would,
behavior. Yeah.
yeah, and so they would use. So what they would do is they would use the railroad. They would use the train tracks because you can follow those train tracks and jump properties,
Oh yeah,
and
for
and,
sure.
and just if a train comes, you can just be hidden somewhere until it's gone, and then off you go. So yeah, it was spooky. A couple of nights I would hear a crunch on the rocks, like, on by the railroad tracks at night, and
Wouldn't it be cool to I've seen some YouTube videos where people make these little electric cars that ride on old railroad tracks,
I
and
have not seen them.
they'll go miles and miles and miles on the would it be nice to find an old railroad that's no longer being used, get one of those
Right.
cars and just ride it at night with a thermal camera?
Oh, geez, man, that would be like the expedition of all expeditions.
Oh my
That
God, that would be
that
awesome.
I think you're onto something, Randy. That's on par and getting a boat, like a pontoon boat, instead of just camping on the boat. I've always wanted to do this. To have these have a couple of thermals, and just not even touch the land. You just go to each remote cove and
Yeah.
drop anchor and just have a yo ho ho of a good old time. And you
Well,
know,
as we get older and our research has to be less strenuous, maybe those should be our lifetime goals.
yeah, I second that. I second that.
What
So
a fun way to observe things.
yeah, you
So
never know. You never
yeah,
know.
well, let's make sure we stay in touch and
Yeah.
give me opportunities to come down there and join you when I can. And
I do. And what I thought about is I really want to get back out to Pat Mays Lake because not really many researchers are out there. They're not doing anything. And I know just from me and David sitting around the campfire, I was able to get him from the retirement home, and we got him out there safely. And he sat down by the fire, and we just had some burgers, and we heard two good long single tone howls. And
nice.
when it stopped, the coyotes went off. In fact, it was still going. I said, I bet you the coyotes are going to go off after this. And we listened, and all of a sudden, here go the coyotes. And then, but there was one from across the cove, and then another one from our side of the lake. And there was two. I said, it's still an active area, and I want to try to put a new team together of some people, maybe some younger people that want to get into this, and maybe some of my older colleagues that I've met over the years, and just try to put a team of 4 or 5, and just that's enough to have a little research team and pound some ground out there because I think that's a great area, and it's not
Well,
too far away from me.
Dave would love my drone.
Oh,
You
I've
know,
told them all about it. I've told them all about it. That one that you said when it was in that field, and then you started getting lower and lower, and whatever it was in the fit the
it darted into the woods.
it kind of stepped back into the woods, and I'm like, dude, that's nuts. Um, so we've talked about Holly Creek again. I think we kind of want to go out. David's on his walker. He can get around really good. We may go out there sometime. I think it's really up to if we have John with us or not, to help take care of him. But it's in the works. Um, I
Well,
think that area.
I really need to make this happen because of his age and the infirmities that's certain to come on and keep coming on as he ages. I've got to get out there. I got to let him see the drone because he'll never have to leave his seat, and it'll be like researching using the drone, and we can
I'm,
locate
I'm
wherever you guys are walking. We can talk to you on
yeah,
walkie-talkies.
I'm serious. Like if I could get some few people together, that's what I was about to say. I was thinking about the other day. Like I was like, man, we could have some 2, 3, 4 people walk the little road, and the drone is just following us, and you can see something 60 yards from us.
And tell you about it and say, hey,
Yeah,
to your 10 o'clock, about 100 yards into the woods, there's a heat signature. Go see what it is.
yeah, yeah. So we're gonna me and David will discuss more, and he's adjusting to his retirement life. He's doing really well there. He's gotten some help with his stability. But as far as getting out into the field, yeah, he's going to be just in the campsite for now. So I'll keep you posted on that. But I think definitely in the works is Pat Mays Lake. I think that area I would want to get back to as well.
Okay.
I wanted to get out to Holly Creek for some landscape photos one day. Even if I'm not researching, I like to go out there and just with a group of people or somebody and just do some land. One thing I do want to do, and I sent you this picture, is that ridge line with what I call the ridge line walker or the ridge line height or the hider behind the tree. It
Mm-hmm.
was a light gray figure is behind that tree, and it was caught on accident.
Right by
And
those
so
kids. Yeah.
yeah, by one of the kids, he was just shooting pictures of the cove, and 2 years later, I zoomed in on that ridge line, and then there's it looked like a head and shoulders. It was like behind the tree, and I want to go back out there with my new 600 millimeter lens, with the digital adapter and slap it on there and shoot pictures of that ridge line to see if there's anything there, or to see if I see the same thing.
Right.
with my new camera that's 30 megapixels. So that's also in the works. So now that this year I'm trying to plan little excursions, and I'll see what happens. But me and David had a talk, and he's not done yet. But I think with
He's going to be
he's
limited.
done. He's limited, and I had a talk with him a while back. I said, I know this is important to you, so I want to try to take on I want to pass the torch. I want you to pass the torch so I can continue on, even if it's not big, huge expeditions, but
It's better
even
than
if it's just,
nothing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we've got to pass the torch, and I'm not done with the story yet. I want to continue because doing this makes me feel awesome. It really does.